Hello, today for review I've got really unusual in-ear monitors, and I really like when some company creates something really unusual because nowadays get some raisin shell, put there a few drivers is not a problem. Biggest problem will be sell it for some viable amount of money, but actually it's not a typical approach for Simgot. It's relatively young company. They appeared on market, if I remember right, in 2017, and since then they are always trying to create something unusual and stylish, and their new model EK3 isn't an exception. It's a 3 balanced armature driver model, if I remember specs right. They're using CI balanced armature for low frequencies and the classical Knowles TWFK for mids and treble. But at the same time, what is interesting here, they're offering a tunable sound. Price is $350 plus minus. I will put links in the description, and let's have a closer look. Box is definitely stylish. It has unusual texture, it has metal inserts, so it looks pretty nice. And what I like, they avoid typical schema with sleeve and inner box. They just using the one box, and you open it this way. Presentation looks really stylish. Here is in-ear monitors themselves. Let me pull them out. Actually, they have protective film applied. Let me share with you this intimate moment of removing. Also, in the accessory set you will have good storage case, 2 set of tips, and what is important, this cleaning tool with a sharp end. I will show a bit later why this end is so important. And of course, pretty predictable, but you will have the cable. It reminds the stock cable of their previous models. If I remember right, they use the same cable with EM3. It's hybrid, high purity oxygen clear copper, and if I remember right, silver plated copper. I could be wrong, but actually I don't think that materials are important. It's important that this cable is attractive and pretty soft. So as you can see, accessory set is really good. Design always was a strong side of Simgot, but this time they overperformed themselves, and EK3 looks extremely stylish, and probably it's one of the most stylish in-ear monitors that probably can be compared even with some high-end custom in-ear monitors. You can get them in 2 versions, transparent one and this grayish one, and as you can see they've selected typical shape. It's ergonomic semi-custom shape, but at the same time it's done using 3D printing, and this allows them to create really seamless shell without any bubbles, without any traces of imperfection. Everything is organized really nicely. And one of the most striking parts is the face plates with this metal honeycomb texture. It's 3-dimensional and it looks extremely attractive. Also, company logo here looks adding a bit more style here. Wearing comfort is also great. They have proper shape, proper size, at least for my ears. They have nice, well extended spouts, and thanks to that they are providing good sound isolation, above average. And also because the shells themselves are on the bigger side, it's also a plus that adding a bit more sound isolation. Of course, it's not something like a Demotic with their deep insertion, but anyway, it's okay for noisy environment. Spouts are made of metal. They have good lip for holding the tip. They have protective grill, so nothing will fall inside of the shells. You can see the inside of this, the internals of this in-ear monitor, this big base balanced armature and smaller for the mids and treble. And actually the most important feature here is this toggle switches for sound tuning. Actually, it was both were in the off position, and it give you neutral and upper mid forward signature, but actually let's speak about sound in the next part. And you can use this part of this cleaning tool to toggle the switches. It's pretty easy, but you need to be careful. Of course, you know, these switches toggles are not created to be switched constantly. It's just to find one signature that suits you most and use it for maybe not forever, but for long periods of time. Cables are made replaceable. Here used 2-pin connector with recessed pins, typical for the Simgot, and it looks attractive. It has good hold. You just connect it, and as you can see, connection is seamless. It's holding really nicely, and the cable itself is also pretty good. It looks attractive. It has ear hook format, no memory wire inside, but it's holding the cable really well around your ear. Cable itself, it's pretty soft, not super soft, but on the softer side. It's not getting hard when it's cold. Has almost zero microphonic, and it looks really attractive. I like this bit tint of gold. It's really attractive look. Perfect braiding, and it goes way down below to the regular 3.5mm jack. So in terms of design, in terms of build quality, in terms of construction, I think it's really great model. And of course about the sound. These in-ear monitors don't require burn-in, as they're pure balanced armature, so nothing to burn in here. Maybe just like 10 or 15 minutes, but actually sound settled really quickly. And of course they require they require finding proper tips, and then you are ready to enjoy them. Actually, I've got best result with spin fits. I'm working on the review of the spin fits lineup. It will be released in some near future. And of course the biggest feature, actually before I continue to this sound tuning, a few words about technical specifications. Sensitivity is 115 decibels, and the impedance is from 14 to 18 ohms depending on the toggle's position. So as you can see, they are a bit on the sensitive side, so for them you need some source with low background noise level. And as for tuning, first I must admit that system of sound tuning with toggles is more convenient than different filters. Compare these toggles with something like FLC tuning system, when you have to use that pilers to toggle that tiny switches, lose them constantly, and so on. Here you just take the brush and easily toggle the necessary switch. Of course, system with switches also isn't Simgot's idea. We've seen that before, but Simgot engineers managed to make it, really reasonable and useful. There are four types of tuning, of course, and they have different names. I don't remember exact names, but basically it's pretty simple. Switch number 1 is responsible for the slight bass boost. When you turn it on, they got small boost at the about 100 Hz area, so basically mid bass. And switch number 2 is responsible for the slight upper mid boost, somewhere in the presence area, somewhere from 2 kHz up to somewhere about 8 or somewhere like that. So probably there will be some measurements showing this impact, but it's just my subjective perception. But actually switch number 2 works in the opposite way. When it's turned off, this boost is present. When it's turned on, boost is gone. Default position is with both switches off, and this tuning is named vocal only. And it's of course logical, because no bass boost and upper mids and lower treble boosted, so you will have vocal forward, especially female one. If you turn the switch number 1 on, it's like probably something like V-shaped, actually maybe not even V-shaped but W-shaped with boost on the low frequencies, on the upper mids, and slightly boost treble. But of course the most interesting, actually maybe not of course, but the most interesting when switch number 2 is on, when you turn both on, if I remember right, it's called balanced, and it's close to typical V-shaped signature. And when you turn bass boost on and turn, actually I was wrong. For balanced signature you have to turn the bass boost on and turn the second switch off. It will be balanced. So, and if you turn both on, it's like the most relaxed on treble signature. If I remember right, it's called exquisite tone, and that's what I probably prefer more, but I'm not sure still, because switch number 2 I like in both positions, and bass boost or number 1 switch is always on for me. Actually everything is described in the manual, so, and after a few experiments I think you will find your own signature that will suit you best of all. So let's have some player on the table and let's proceed. So I will describe the sound for this for the position where both toggles are turned on. So bass is nice, it's a bit accented, especially on the mids. It's it's a good balanced armature bass. It's on the faster side, a bit drier than dynamic driver one, but still pretty enjoyable. It's fast with great texture representation, with normal depths, but of course don't expect this super rumble and super weight of dynamic driver models, because here it's just balanced armatures, but with boosted bass it's pretty enjoyable, and it builds a pretty solid foundation, and it sounds pretty nicely. And as an example, here I've got Postmodern, Scott Bradley's Postmodern Jukebox, the new classics. If you don't know about this project, I definitely recommend it to you. Maybe it's the most productive project in the history of world music, because they release like 3, 4, sometimes 5 albums per year, and I like them. They actually take popular hits from rock music, from pop music, and they make cover versions in jazz, swing, and similar styles, giving a bit of vintage romantics to the modern classics. And as an example, I've got the album that named The New Classics. It's a recorded live album, and track is named All About That Bass. And actually, as you can easily guess, it's all about the bass, but here based, of course, used not synthesized bass but acoustic bass. And when it's recorded live, it's with big band, it's easy to get lost this bass, and thanks to the bass boosted mode in this in-ear monitors, you will get a necessary amount of lows to bring this instrument back to the tune. Also, what I like about these in-ear monitors, it's a pretty nice transition to the mid frequencies. There is almost zero traces of the driver's overlap and no issues on the lower mids. Mids here are linear. Of course, they are a bit on the faster side and with good resolution. If you heard TWFK, you probably can get an idea of how mids sounded here. Simgot managed to achieve necessary amount of weight on mids. They are not super weighty, and but of course it's for those who prefer clarity and resolution. Imaginary stage is good, it's noticeably above average both in width and in depth, especially if you tune it to the vocal mode. Toggling both switches off, you will have the biggest stage. And in this position probably it's, well, not the smallest, but it became smaller, but still pretty good, with nice three-dimensional imaging. And of course, as usual, as many well-tuned balanced armatures, they require a good quality of material, nicely recorded tracks. And as an example, for the mid frequencies, I've got really rare group. It's Pazzo band, it's some group from Russia, it's trio that played jazz using the harmonica, and it sounded really nicely, really lively and enjoyable. I'm not sure is it possible to get them on some streaming services, but it's definitely, the music that has its own unique atmosphere, and actually that music requires nice detailed mids to represent that harmonica in a proper way, and once again Simgot managed to do that with their, thanks to their clarity you will achieve the necessary level of performance. And of course treble, it's a bit elevated at the mid treble, and you can control the peak on the lower treble, so you can select amount of sharpness, amount of clarity. If you're treble sensitive you can tame the upper mids, but of course as many balanced armatures they are still a bit on the brighter side, but not actually too bright, and they have normal extension of treble, not superb, but to achieve superb treble extension you usually need much more balanced armatures, and price will be increased too. So anyway, treble is really natural, really detailed, with good attacks and decays, so it's also typical for the TWFK, and it's I like TWFK treble performance. And as an example, really familiar, actually famous, not familiar, famous jazz track. It's the Quintet, Jazz at the Macy Hall. It's Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker, Charles Mingus, and two other guys that I can't remember. I'm always forgetting their names, but I think it's not important. It's one of the best live records in the history of jazz, and it's probably the best jazz performance of that time, 1958 or somewhere there. And track named Salt Peanuts. It became one of the jazz standards, and it has a nice drum line with a lot of crashing cymbals, and it also requires a good performance from the in-ear monitors, especially on treble, and of course EK3 with the TWFK drivers. They managed to nail this track really nicely. So to summarize everything, it's a good balanced armatures with accent on the detailization, with they are a bit on the faster side. Sometimes they can lack a bit of weight, but they tune to be on the faster side to provide the maximum resolution, clarity, and at the same time bass is good. It has a nice amount, especially if you boost it, so it's pretty musical signature, and they don't fall towards dry, natural, clinical sounding. So if you interested in this idea of tuning, because when you don't know what tuning you want, it's a nice idea to get some tunable in-ear monitors. You increase your chances to find the tuning that will suit your needs, and here this idea implemented well. And to drive them properly, they don't require any powerful source. Main thing for them is to have the source that have a nice black background. In terms of genres, they are pretty universal, so basically it depends on the tastes, but they play nicely almost everything. Of course, for example, for electronic music, they don't have this eardrum crushing bass, but I still liked the Antwoord, I liked the Prodigy with them, because thanks to this boosted bass, it's a bit dry, but it's still pretty enjoyable. And a few words about comparisons, just some brief comparisons, because as I press record buttons, I'm forgetting the models that I want to mention in this part. So, FIO FA7 is also multi-balanced armature model with similar price, but they have much bigger accent on the lows and on the mids, so they are warmer. At the same time, they have more extended treble, but because of the lows accent, treble is not as noticeable. So basically, this model is closer to natural sound. Fearless S6 Rui is also weighty, it has more weight and less treble. Well, some hybrid models probably are not the best comparison because it's predictable. You will have more weighty, more impactful bass, but with less resolution. So I won't try to think about some other comparisons. Probably if you are interested in some particular models, just feel free to ask in the comments and I will try to share some thoughts. But actually, result usually is pretty predictable. So to summarize everything, really nice, really good musical model. Yeah, forgot to mention that it's definitely an improvement over Simgot's own EM3 model with more resolution and more detalization and more natural sound. So it's a good model with detailed representation, with nice low frequencies, good detailed mids. Trebles was also good, but not much sense in mentioning that some parts of the sonic spectrum are good and with well implemented tunable sound. And of course, don't forget about this stylish design. Thank you for attention.